Welcome to the Winner's Playbook. Every winner needs a game plan, and this one's for you.
I'm Billy, and today I'm joined by a special guest, Fei Kong, a financial advisor here at 𝘆𝗆 who knows the ins and outs of investing in Australia while you're on a visa. If you're a non-resident, a temporary visa holder, or just new to the country, this episode is packed with practical advice to help you make smart money moves without running into trouble. Fei, it's great to have you here. How are you going?
It's my pleasure. Hello, Billy. Hello, everyone.
How's your week been? I know we're on school holidays at the moment, so.
Yes, it's true. So this is the second week of school holidays. So as you know, we were on a group conference in Singapore last week, and my kids are staying with grandparents, which they have a great time. A little bit spoiled for sure, but I'm sure they had a great time last week. And next week, back to school, I think. The kids go back to school Thursday next week for mine.
I see. Yeah, same here with the grandparents. There's always a bit too much TV, too many lollies and sweets. They always have a great time there, and then often a bit of a crash when they come back home again. But that's okay.
Sure. The first question they ask, question they ask is, Dad, what time can I go back to grandparents?
Yeah, I've had that too. You walk in, they don't even acknowledge that you're there because they know the sweets might end or something like that.
Sure.
All right, let's get into it. So let's talk visas, non-residents, etc. So let's start with the basics. Can non-residents actually invest in Australia, and what are the main options?
Yeah, sure. So in general ways, non-resident can definitely invest in Australia, but there's definitely things to be mindful, and it's important to understand the rules and restrictions may apply. So for example, a lot of our clients are investing, even they are non-resident, they can still invest in the direct property, they can invest in the share markets, ETFs, including like managed funds, or something simple. They can still put money in a bank account, put it into term deposit or online savings account. So there's a few options over there.
Okay, so it's pretty much the same as for anyone who's already in Australia, like a citizen or anything like that.
Yes, correct. However, the tricky thing is, for example, if you want to buy property in Australia, you need to get an approval from FIRB, which is a foreign investment review board, before buying the residential property. And you need to be careful about extra stamp duties or like any other like restrictions around that. Similar, like for example, if you go to a bank to open a bank account or put some money in the savings account or term deposit, they will ask you to provide tax file number, TFN. If you don't quote your tax file number to the bank, it's likely to be charged like withholding tax up to like 45%.
I see. And so to get around that, you just need to give them your tax file number.
Yes, correct. So the tax file number is quite important, but be careful. Sometimes you can apply for a tax file number, sometimes you cannot. So it depends on your visa category.
Okay, I see. And you mentioned the FIRB, the Foreign Investment Review Board. Yeah, so that's if you want to buy a property. Is that a tricky or lengthy process, getting that approval?
Yes, it is. So usually it's not that simple as a one piece of application that you can get approved. So usually we will recommend client to go through with the professionals, either your accountant or mortgage brokers or your financial advisors to making sure you're on the right path of the application.
I see. And do you know what they look at there before they approve? Is it basically about your intention to stay in the country, or what's the deal there?
Yes, correct. They look at your visa, look at your long-term plans, long-term goals, and also they also need to making sure you're aware of the additional stamp duty or tax you may apply when you purchase or when you sell in a property, something like that.
Okay, cool. And what else is there anything else that people on visas need to know before they start investing or saving here? Like you've touched on a couple of things already around tax file numbers and the FIRB. Is there anything else?
Yes, a few things really matter. First, like visa conditions. Some of the visas are restricted to work or investment activities. So some of the, like, for example, my grandfather recently arrived in Australia on a travel visa. So he's on visa for like 3 months only. On his particular visa, there is a condition, I forgot the numbers, but the condition said no work. So that means throughout the period, he cannot work in Australia, and that means he cannot apply a normal tax file number in Australia, because usually if you go to work for someone, you get paid, you need to pay tax, right? So for his circumstances, he cannot apply a tax file number in the ordinary way from ATO online. So there's a paper applications he have to go through. And then you need to know your tax residency status. So if you're not a permanent resident, then ATO may be treating you as a Australian tax resident, depending on your circumstances. And then you need to be aware, for example, where you're coming from, the local currency transferring to Australian, the different transfer limits, the banking fees, compliance. Nowadays, AML, anti-money laundering, is a key focus for all the major banks and for the government too. So it's something to be aware of.
This sounds complicated.
It is. It's not as easy as a clear cut. Like we were born in Australia and we earn money in Australia. So if you have money moving from overseas into Australia, there are so many rules to follow.
And so you were born in a. So you're saying, like, how have you come to learn all of these things? Was it just through your work, or was it also through like friends and relatives and everything like that?
It's both, you mentioned, and also my own experience, because I was born in China. So I come from China since 2006. So almost 20 years, 19 years until now. So I came in as a international student. Of course, I don't have money to invest back then, but I still can bring maybe a few $1,000s to save, to keep a bank account in here. So I know I need to apply for a tax file number first. I can put into the bank account. So I had my experience when I first start and live in Australia. I can see back in early 2000, at that time, if you remember, Billy, the interest rate is extremely high. I remember when I put money into HSBC at that point of time, I earning the interest about 7% or 6% per year, like a online savings account. Each month, the interest is quite high. However, I found out I got $200 interest, which makes me happy. However, straight away, $100 is gone, saying withholding tax. So at that time, I don't know what's happening, because you don't know the tax system and don't know what's happening here. Then I go to the bank and I ask them, they're saying, okay, you have to apply for a tax file number. After you get that tax file number, you let us know, then we can report it. We can refund all the withholding tax back to your account. So that's personal experience.
Yes. Yeah. And now and then the last few years, you've been working with a lot of clients around these things as well.
Yes. So that's part of the reason I'm choosing a career as a financial advisor, and also part of my focus is helping new migrants coming to Australia, because they're coming from different background, different culture, different tax system, different retirement system. So for them they have no idea how Australia ways of investment, tax planning, retirement planning, etc. So that's why there's a huge demand to making sure everyone who is moving from overseas to Australia, they know what's happening and what they should do to follow the rules.
Yeah, and we were talking about this the other day. There's also a different psychology around investing from other cultures as well. Like obviously you work with a lot of Chinese. I understand there's a lot of belief around like just accumulating cash, and that's all you sort of need to do. So I imagine, is that a big part of it as well, like educating people about all the options they have?
Yes, the key reason, there's nothing right or wrong here, but just different beliefs, because I guess the key reason is the investment environment is totally different comparing Australia and China or other countries, because overseas, the managed funds is more backed by like property or backed by other like property or private equity funds, etc., which it was doing well over the last 10 or 20 years, while China is developing significantly quick. However, recently there's so many issues in the property market and the liquidity issues on the funds, so people are feeling like the investment is more like a scam, but which is different in like the in Australia, because we still invest in the share market, in the ETFs, in the managed funds. So this is more transparent and different environment here.
Okay, and so what are some common mistakes you see non-residents making?
Well, throughout the career so far, and families and friends. So first of all, I actually see some of people, they purchase the property without FIRB approval. So that potentially leading to a huge amount of fines, or sometimes even enforce the sales, because the government can do so. That actually happens to some of the Chinese community newspaper as well. And something other like that, they're thinking, okay, I'm non-resident for tax purposes, and then, but technically, many visas, like even temporary visas, for example, like student visas, people thinking student visa is a temporary residence for maybe 3 years or 4 years, depends on how long you're going to study in Australia. However, from ATO point of view, student visa, even if it's a temporary visa, is still treated as Australian tax residence for tax purposes. So it's different, right? So even so, many people and many visa holders actually end up being tax resident under ATO rule without realizing that, which affects everything from the tax rates to capital gains tax, etc. So that's why a lot of education required in this area. And also from long-term point of view, because we know investment is not 1 or 2 days or 1 or 2 years, it's actually, we should consider as a long-term. If we invest in a long-term but start with a personal name without thinking about like a trust or company, if it's right thing to do, so different structure have different benefits. So that's something people are always have misunderstanding. There's plenty in our community. There's plenty people like to keep buying properties on their personal names or on the couple, like family members' names, without considering any other structures. Because back in overseas or back in China, we only consider, okay, let's buy property. They only just put my names, put my wife's name, my son's name, my father's name.
Yeah.
They didn't consider what's the tax residency, visa status, and potential capital gain tax in the future, something like that.
Okay, and then like with China, if they're a tax resident of Australia, does that affect how much tax they're paying in China or any assets they have back in China as well?
Well, that's a tricky question. I may not able to answer directly, because the system, the tax system is different between US and Australia and of course China, and each country have their different like tax. What should I call?
Like treaties or agreements with other countries.
It's called Common Reporting System, CRS. It's called Common Reporting System in section. So for some circumstances, if you paid tax in Australia, you don't have to pay the same amount tax in overseas, but different countries have different treatments. So I guess that's the best answer will coming from your qualified tax accountant.
Of course, yeah. That's right. Yeah, important to note, like we're licensed to give advice in Australia, not in China. But
yes, true.
But I guess a big part of our job is flagging there's potential issues, or you need to go and speak to someone else as well, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. And so what's a smart first step for someone new to Australia? How should they start thinking about this, and what should they do?
Okay. Oh, like based on my own experience, the first step is, of course, get a tax file number first.
Yes, get the TFN.
Get a TFN, get a tax file number. This lets you legally to work or invest or put money back in a bank in Australia and reduce tax withhold from your income. So this is the first thing. And then if you want to invest in Australia, open a bank account. Easy access, savings, transfers, and you can have some money in a term deposit for security reasons. And then before, as financial advisors, we're always thinking about, okay, if you want to invest, you have to think about plan B first, which is build up a emergency fund or have a piece of insurance covered just in case if the plan didn't go ahead, what's the backup option? And then there's another key area, which is foreigners or people new migrants coming to Australia that are not familiar with, is the superannuation system in Australia. It's totally different. We've been to Singapore recently. I'm from China. I know how the Hong Kong rules, what's happening in Macau. Each different places have different retirement or superannuation system. They are totally different. In Australia, your employer will be contributing a 12% of your ordinary earnings into your super, but it's not the case in China, not the case in Singapore. So get a step further to have a better understanding of a super is quite important.
Yeah, and how should people start to learn about these things? Like, obviously, you know, they can speak to an advisor or an accountant or something. You have to find someone who specializes in people who are moving to Australia. But what sort of online resources? Like, I know you spend a bit of time doing stuff on WeChat. Yeah, where should they look online to get clear information? Because it seems pretty complicated.
Yes, the best source from online will be moneysmart.gov.au. That's our government information, right? So that's endorsed by, I think it should be ASIC. So that's the true of source. And it's very basic fundamental informations. So as a start. And then I'm sure speaking with your licensed accountant, trusted advisors will be helping you to making sure every step of your investment journey or lives in Australia's journey will making sure you're easier.
Okay, and probably the last thing here, if you are planning to stay in Australia long term, what can you do now to make life easier for you later?
That's a great question, and we're actually helping clients day by day, because all the advice we give, holistic advice we give, is for long-term purposes, not ever for a short-term for a couple months. So like we discussed before, making sure we invest on a right structure. Don't only pigeonhole the investment can be under personal name by myself only, or inside myself and my wife or your partner. It can be under your personal name, can be through a trust structure, can be through a company structure, can be through a self-managed fund structure. So the early we have a clear roadmap, the better you will be. And switching later can trigger extra tax. So that's the first thing. And of course, we also discussed get your insurance in place once you become temporary or permanent residents. You should get yourself in place, for example, a life insurance, income protection cover, your private health insurance. Actually, we haven't talked about this. Private health cover is different. Before you become a permanent resident of Australia, from the immigration point of view, you can only have like overseas private health insurance. As soon as you become a permanent resident, and if you do not have your private health cover, you start paying loadings, that lifetime loadings, until the time you start to have your own health cover. So that's quite complex. Then we can always have a separate topic about that. So that's about getting insurance in place. And then credit history. Credit history in Australia is very, very important. You're making sure we pay the bills on time, pay the credit card balance on time, etc. The credit history is crucial when we applying for a home loan or buying a house in the future. So that's quite important. And of course, thinking about long term, this topic maybe is not that popular in like Chinese or Asian community, but it's getting more attention, is thinking about the future, about the estate. Because a lot of, including myself, for example, I came to Australia by myself as a first family member of my whole family. But if anything happens to me, majority of my relatives, they're still staying overseas or in China. So how are they going to manage my estate, if anything happens to me? So that is a huge thing to think about.
This
So yeah,
sounds like, if you've got some complexity, it sounds like there's quite a few different areas here. Like
yeah,
you've got areas for an advisor who understands what it's like people moving to Australia,
yes,
tax advice. Again, not all accountants will be across all of these things. You've got
yes,
estate planning, that's a lawyer. You've got
mhm,
borrowing, that's a finance broker or a bank.
yes,
So there's a lot going on.
yes,
So
correct.
start small, get the tax file number sorted first,
True.
maybe one step at a time.
Yes, correct. And sometimes my clients, they have like accountants in Australia and also accountants in China because they have
Mm.
assets in different places. They have family lawyers in Australia dealing with Australian assets and estate, and they have lawyers for in China because they still have business or assets in China as well. So it's not easy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is what we tell clients quite a bit who have a bit more going on or a bit more complexity, is that you
Hmm.
actually do need a team. You
Hmm.
need a team around you if you want all of these things to be done well.
Yes,
Trying to
yes.
DIY when you've got
Mhm.
a few moving parts like that is pretty tough. So
Yes, correct.
yeah.
Usually that's like analogy I tell our clients is like the first if you come to us as a financial advisors, then this is the first step because we more like acting as a GP, so we can refer you to a specialist who is experienced in Australian tax and also Chinese tax, and then we can also refer you to a family lawyer who familiar with Australian or Victoria's legal system and as well as overseas legal Chinese legal system, etc. So we know how to manage the flow in the best of your or client's interest.
Absolutely. Well, Fei, thank you so much for your insights. Do you have it? Do you have any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Final thoughts. I think everything, like we mentioned, is everything's thinking about long term. If we are migrating to Australia or planning to come to Australia or long term, it's always good to thinking ahead, to put everything in place, to have the right structure, right protection, right solution in place, and find out the trusted accountant, trusted advisor, to making sure avoid the mistakes. I think that's the huge thing.
That's great. Well, look, so being on a visa doesn't mean you have to put your financial future on hold. You just need to know how to play the game.
Mhm. True.
If this episode helped, hit follow, leave us a review, and send it to someone who's just arrived or figuring out their next move. We'll catch you next time on the Winner's Playbook. Thank you, Fei.
Perfect. Thank you, Billy. Bye, everyone.
Disclaimer. The information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal situation. Please head to the show notes if you wish to book a free 15-minute call to discuss your personal situation.